All right, let's talk about one of the biggest challenges for any growing business. How do you build something that runs like a well-oiled machine on systems instead of just relying on a few heroic people to save the day? That's what we're diving into.
So let me just start with a question for you. Think about your absolute rock star, your go to person on the team, the one who knows everything. Now, here's the tough question. Is that person really your greatest asset? Or are they maybe secretly your biggest risk? It's a bit of a provocative thought, but it's so important.
So here's our game plan. First, we're going to unpack what I call the Superman employee problem. Then, we'll get into why systems are the magic ingredient for making success happen over and over again. And finally, we'll walk through 3 super practical steps to make it happen. Document everything, build for accountability, and design roles for goals. Okay, let's jump right into part 1, the Superman employee problem. This is all about that tricky situation where your greatest asset can, weirdly enough, also be your greatest liability. This really just lays it all out, doesn't it? A company that runs purely on talent? Well, it feels amazing when everyone's there and things are going well, but it's fragile. It can't really scale. And you have this massive key person risk hanging over your head. On the other hand, a systems-driven company is robust. It's scalable, it's resilient, because success is baked into the process, not just one person. Let me tell you about this one employee. We'll call her Lady B. She was incredible. A client could call after 6 months and she would remember every single detail of their last conversation without looking at a single note. It was like she had a recorder in her brain. Amazing, right? But here's the catch. Nobody else could do what she did because none of that incredible knowledge was written down anywhere. And that really gets to the heart of the problem. When all that critical day-to-day knowledge lives only in people's heads, it just walks right out the door with them when they leave. Your business gets stuck, it can't grow, and you feel like you're starting from scratch every single time a key player decides to move on. Okay, so what's the fix? Well, it's all about making success repeatable. The whole point is to build a system that lets motivated, everyday people achieve extraordinary things consistently. You know, think back to school for a second. We all knew that one kid, right? The wizard, who never seemed to crack a book but somehow magically aced every single test. That's just raw talent. It's awesome to watch, but you can't really teach it or copy it. But then you've got this classic saying, and it's so true, because in this context, hard work is really just another word for having a good system. While the wizard was relying on their genius brain, the rest of us could still get an A by following a process. Actually studying the notes, practicing the problems, knowing what was going to be on the test. The process made a great result predictable. And that brings us to the key idea here, systemization. It sounds like some big formal business term, but it's really not. It's just the simple process of writing down your best practices, what works, so that anybody with the right attitude can follow the steps and get amazing results every single time. It turns success from a lucky break into a repeatable process. So how do we actually do this? Well, we can break it all down into 3 clear, actionable steps. Number 1, document everything. Number 2, build for accountability. And number 3, design your roles to meet your goals. All right, let's dig into step 1, document everything. This is all about capturing your company's secret sauce. That intuition, that experience, the magic way your best people do what they do, and turning it into a recipe that anyone can follow. So what are we talking about here? Well, things like your standard operating procedures, your SOPs. What are the actual step-by-step processes for getting things done? What are the best practices your top people use without even thinking? What are your company policies? Basically, any action that's done over and over and leads to a good result. That needs to be captured so it can be taught and improved. Now for step 2. Because look, having a great playbook is useless if it just sits on a shelf. You have to build an environment where people actually use the systems. And that means creating a performance infrastructure, which is just a fancy way of saying a system of accountability built on total clarity and responsibility. This whole infrastructure really stands on 2 pillars. First up is visibility. Everybody needs to see clearly what's going on and what's important. You do this with tools like dashboards, scorecards, things that track the key numbers. The second pillar is accountability. This is the rhythm of responsibility. You build it with things like daily check-ins or weekly team meetings where everyone talks openly about what's working and what's not. These 2 things together make sure your documented systems actually get used.
And that brings us to our final step, and honestly, this might be the biggest mindset shift of them all. Design roles for goals. The philosophy here is simple but powerful. You fit people to the role you need. You don't squish the role down to fit the people you have. We've all seen this happen. It's such a common mistake. You've got a great, loyal person. Let's call him Ken. He's been with the company forever, but he just doesn't have all the skills for the HR manager role the business really needs to grow. So what happens? The role gets shrunk to fit what Ken can do right now. But the scalable way, the right way, is to do the exact opposite. You start with the goal. What does the business need from this position to win? You design the perfect role on paper first. Then, and only then, do you go out and find the person who fits that description. You're bringing people up to the level of the role, not designing a limited role around the people you've got. At the end of the day, making this shift from being talent-driven to being systems-driven is how you build a business that can truly scale and last. It's about making your success a matter of process, not just personality. So I'm going to leave you with one final question to think about. What is one single process in your world that you can start to systemize this week?